So I'm headed out on a camping trip for the weekend, so I thought I'd do a video. And what I want to talk about is tribalism today. So up until probably the mid to late 60s, you had things like the church, civic groups, social groups, and those were pretty much your mainstream tribes, if you will. Um, as humans, we're social by nature, so we have to have that connection with people. For the most part, there's some lone wolves out there and outliers that don't require it, but for the most part, I'd say 95% of us do. And you have things like not as prevalent now as it was back, probably through the late 70s to late 80s. Bowling leagues, you have softball, baseball teams. A lot of people either get together as friends or co-workers and things like that. But everybody belongs to some sort of tribe. But once the shift began, then it started introducing new tribes and people wanting to belong to something else other than the mainstream tribes. And this is where a lot of cults came into play, because they filled a void that people had by not participating in those traditional organizations. Then you move forward to the internet, and I think tribalism has become even more fierce than it was back then, because now you have people that aren't socially adept because of being isolated with technology. Because let's face it, everybody's on their phone and on their computer, and we just don't have the social interactions that people like me had growing up. So you have more people who are distanced from society, and they're looking for something that will fill that void. And I think that's where a lot of extremism comes into play. People are accepted because these groups need members, so they accept these people and they feel like this is their tribe, and they're going to do whatever the tribe wants them to do, up to and including suicide. I mean, all you have to do is look at Jim Jones and his cult, or the Heaven's Gate cult. People wanting to belong to some tribe, and as long as that tribe accepts them, they're going to follow whatever that tribe wants them to do. And it's a shame that we've come to that we've allowed technology to come between us and our social lives. And I think as time progresses, we're going to come to a head where people are going to have to either decide consciously to step away from technology and become more social like we used to be, or society's just going to devolve and we will eventually just cease to exist. There was an experiment done, I believe it was in the 60s, at the University of Maryland, by a professor using rats. And what he did was he had a colony of rats, and he gave them everything they could ever want. All the food they could eat, plenty of mazes to run around, you name it. And through about 4 generations of rats, it got to the point where they lost interest in the opposite sex and didn't reproduce anymore. And eventually they just died out because they weren't having offspring. And I think we are getting close to that point if we don't change things. I think extremism has become the norm for a lot of people because of this tribalism, and the less human contact we have, I think the more extreme these tribes are going to become. And it's a shame, because society could be so much better than what it is if people would just put the phone down, step away from the computer, be social with other people. You don't have to be in a tribe to have a social life. But unfortunately, that's pretty much what we've come to, just because we don't socialize anymore. And any socializing that takes place is organized via technology. And I think for some people, that can be a turnoff for them, because I think people have preconceived notions of what these so-called get-togethers are going to be, and they show up and it's nothing like what they thought it was going to be, and that creates even more problems, because now they don't trust any of the other tribes that they might be interested in. Now you have lone wolves out there who otherwise would be a part of some social group. So, am I on the right track? Did I nail it, or am I just seeing things the wrong way? Give me a comment. Let me know what you think. Let's get a discussion going about this. And I'll see you next time.